Welcome to the Village of Bartlett Committee of the Whole meeting for September 16, 2014. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Aaron?
Here.
Hammerer?
Here.
Carbonaro?
Here.
Martin?
Still here.
Ranky?
Here.
Chipman?
Here.
President Wallace?
Here. Two items on our committee meeting this evening. The first one is under Finance and Golf, under Chairman Ranky.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have one item on the agenda, the Bartlett Hills update and renovation, and I would certainly not want to steal the staff's thunder regarding their plans to renovate Bartlett Hills and generate additional revenue.
I thought we'd start with the update first. During the last budget, the board came up with a lot of really great ideas of things that we ought to try out at Bartlett Hills, and then we had a strategic planning session with the staff out of Bartlett Hills to generate some more ideas, and thought we'd go through and show you, even though it's not a 6-month update, that will be coming, where we are so far and how those things have worked. So why don't we do that first, and I'll have Bob do that portion of it.
All right. Thank you, Valerie. I want to start out by saying how proud I am of our staff and their efforts with a lot of these initiatives that have been identified earlier this year, not only with their efforts on each initiative, but through our strategic planning session, which was a first for us out there to do it internally like we did. Paula came over and led our discussion, did just a great job getting ideas and thoughts out of our staff, and a lot of those ideas and thoughts are what you're looking at here today, along with what we discussed as a group here earlier this year. I want to start out by saying that we've been fortunate this year, and I say it with fingers and toes crossed. We've been able to hold our expenses down considerably this year due to some good weather, no major catastrophes out there, and the like. So we're very pleased about that. We're very sensitive toward our expenses. We monitor every dollar going in, every dollar going out. Right now, we're doing well, and we're pleased with that, but, you know, that's to date. So we're going to continue on a strong path in that respect and do the best job we possibly can on that. As far as some of the initiatives that we talked about earlier and we discussed at length during our strategic planning session, first of all, is practice range, trying to build revenues there. We increased the cost of a large bucket of balls by $1 and had staff do some suggestive selling up at the counter, and that's helped us a lot this year. We've increased revenues by over 18% this year, from $18,000 to $21,600. So we're pleased about that. We talked about maybe more events, more activity later in the season. That we're doing. We have 12 more events coming up from this point forward. A lot of them are golf outings, that type of thing, including the Tricia Lynn Simon Foundation charity outing, Bartlett Silverhawks, Bartlett Soccer, Elgin High Invitational, DuPage Valley Conference Championship, the Bill Tickness Classic, which I think we're going to roll into a fall classic on top of it, kind of make it one big celebration here come early November. So we're pleased about that. We're pleased that we still have a lot of activity going on. We're hoping that the weather cooperates and we can get all these events in. Another thing we talked about, and these are revenue-generating ideas, restructuring league times. When our leagues were larger, we allowed them to use 1 and 10 in the afternoons, late in the afternoons, which effectively closed our tee sheet from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 4 in the afternoon. This year, because leagues are a little bit smaller, we had them, except for Mondays, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, they went off 1-9 only, which allowed us to open up those 2 hours of tee times from 2 to 4. As people realized that they could come out and play 18 holes uninterrupted, those times began to get more active. Play grew during those times. I think we generated, I think 400 or 800, I think, some rounds of golf, 850 rounds of golf, approximately $21,000 in revenue during those times, which in the past were actually closed off to play, except for 9-hole play, which people just don't want to do. They want to go out and play 18 holes. So we're very pleased about that. That's an area that'll grow over time, because for 30 years we didn't do that. Now all of a sudden we did start doing that. Got the word out. People began to trust us that in fact was the case, and it got busier, and we were very pleased about that. Another thing we addressed too was a growing number of no-shows on our tee sheet. People that made tee times didn't adhere to those tee times, maybe didn't show up for whatever reason. So what we did here was on weekends and holidays, we took credit cards to guarantee those times, and also put a credit card on file for our permanent tea time groups on Saturday and Sunday morning. And trust me, it greatly eliminated no-shows. It did two things. It eliminated the no-shows, number one, because they knew they were going to get charged if they didn't show, and then number two, they started calling on a regular basis and saying, hey, I know we're down for 4, we're only going to have 2 today. That's great. That gives us an opportunity to fill them, which we did, which we were able to do, which again generates more revenue. So
Yeah.
it worked.
I got a call when I subbed for somebody, and they called me on Monday, and I said, don't you guys golf on Saturday? And I said, yeah, but I need to know today.
That's right. That's right. They took it seriously, and it really did help. It really helped fill our tee sheets and that type of thing. So that was a really good thing. And then taking note too, any tee times made through our website, any tee times made through third-party tee time providers, those are all guaranteed through credit cards, even weekday ones. Through credit cards. So that has really helped us a lot and made people more aware of the need to call us, in case they are unable to fulfill their obligation, and they have, and they've done a great job. The golfers have done a great job on that. Another thing we talked about, earlier start for some of our weekday outings. A lot of our outings were starting at 12:30, 1 o'clock, which effectively killed the rest of the day on our tee sheet. We got those people to move up 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, get them off the golf course 3, 4 o'clock, able to get our twilight and league play out there. Again, effective, worked, no issues with the outings. They understood completely and cooperated with us fully. So that was another thing that worked very well. Back to our third-party tee time providers, we use 2 in particular, Golf Now and Great Greens Fees. Both of them changed their business plans this year. We kind of held out on Golf Now a little bit, but they changed their business plans, made them more user-friendly for us. We literally had control of those tee times and what we were charging for those tee times. We had the ability to go home at night, look at our cell phones, and change the times and change the rates that we were actually proposing for the next day, as an example. If it was a very slow time, we were not getting any action, any response for certain tee times, we were able to do that. So did a couple things. One, it gave us control again. We were able to generate an additional $23,000 this year through our third-party people. And more importantly, because we had control of the rates that we were charging, the revenue per round went from $38.52 last year to $42.26 this year per round. And there were many times, especially on Saturday and Sunday mornings, Saturday and Sunday mornings and twilight times, where we were getting full retail for those times, which is almost unheard of for this type of program. So very, very pleased with all that. Again, just happy, and the discounted rounds, it's more controllable now. And I think both of those third-party programs understood that that's what they had to do. So that was working out real well. A few other things here. Junior golf, we're not sure what, and just juniors in general playing, that's a problem for all of us. Associations, we noticed that junior golf was down, generally speaking. Illinois Junior Golf Association, their numbers were down. Junior golf programs, numbers are down. Talking to the golf coaches, we have numerous golf coaches, even some of the local powerhouses in high school golf, struggling with numbers, struggling with quality, average scores going up. It's just, it's something we're all facing. We're all facing, we all have to try to do something about it, try to get these kids involved. We're going up against travel this, travel that. The travel teams are very, very expensive. You're talking about, additional income to do these different sports and that type of thing. And the time it takes to play the game, to be honest with you. And the kids are in, kids are in the tech mode. They're in tech mode right now. And, maybe we have to do something to make it more exciting. Don't know what, but I know all the professional organizations and that type of thing are working on it, and coaches are working on it, and golf pros are working on it, and we are too. As far as how we promoted the golf course this year too, we used our website, and we advertised our junior golf program through the paper, through the Examiner, and we always use the Examiner for fish fry, girls' night out, Easter brunch, Mother's Day brunch, those type of things. So we stay within the community. promoting and advertising some of our programs. And I have to tell you that one of the best things about this year out there was the condition of the golf course. Kevin just did a marvelous job from the very first day we opened to date today. I can't tell you how many people have told us best golf course we played all year, without question.
Wow.
Had the Chicago District Golf Association out middle of the summer for an Illinois State Amateur qualifying. They said the same thing. Of all their events up to that date, this was the best conditioned golf course they'd played. And
he's in the crowd right now,
Yes,
I
he
think,
is.
isn't he? Well done.
yes, he's done a fantastic job. So, and
That makes a big difference.
Yeah,
I mean, when people that golf get off of a golf course, their first comment is, "That course is in decent shape," or "It's in great shape," or
Right.
"That course is in really bad shape."
And we're here in great shape.
Yeah, that's
Those
good.
are the comments that we're getting. So we're really pleased about that. Going into food and beverage, we talked a little bit about food and beverage and certain initiatives there too. One of the first things we did was we offered credit card service on our Bev card. We've had it for a couple of years at the Midway. People have really appreciated that. And we've started it now on the Bev card. And trust me, there's not a lot of golf courses you can go to use a credit card on a beverage card. But the technology has improved to a point where it made it feasible to do and reasonable to do and secure enough to do. So we've done that, and I think that's been well received. Again, that's going to be another initiative here that's going to grow over time, and as people get used to the fact that they can use credit cards there, because they go most places and they can't. So, that's just one thing that we do that other places maybe don't offer as much as you might expect. Also on the beverage card too, we increased our selection, adding liquor to mixed drinks to our offerings. We've always had the beer and the Gatorades and the water and the pop and all that type of thing, and here we've added mixed drinks to our offerings. Again, that's been well received. It's really well received during outings and group functions. It's really well received there. So they appreciate that. We've gotten involved in room rentals, situations which require specific menus that we don't offer. We've gotten involved in some room rentals. We've 8 to date. One more coming up this weekend, so it'll be a total of 9 through this week. We're still working through that process, and it seems to be working okay. It's still hard to know what to charge because of the demands of each particular function, because they're all different. But I think we're getting a better handle on it, and I think people appreciate the opportunity to be able to come in and use our facility, but yet bring in specialized food offerings. So I think that's been good. Renovations, as you know, with the clubhouse, and you're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. We've started renovating the interior of our clubhouse, understanding that we're already in a building that's almost 19 years old. It's hard to imagine that it's been 19 years already since that thing opened up, but we've been doing some interior work on there, and because we've been doing that, we've been advertising that, throwing it out there in the Chicago-style weddings, the wedding wire, those type of things on the website, so that people understand when they're coming in for banquets and special events and that type of thing that we are doing our part in upgrading and updating a facility that's been around for a bit. So that's been working out well. We continue to use our signage out on 59 for food and beverage especially. That's just been great. Helped out a lot, brings a lot of attention to our facility. Our menus, our luncheon menu, our grill room menu, not only does it look better, but the selections on there are better than they used to be, and I think they've been very well received. We've also gotten pretty aggressive with specials, weekly specials, not only menu specials, but snack specials and those type of things, beer specials, those type of things to bring people in, and that has helped tremendously. I think people do appreciate that. They look forward to it. They look forward to our weekly specials to see what we have on, what we're offering on a particular day. So, and most importantly, we eliminated the free potato chips. So, no more free potato chips. It was a little rough at the beginning, but we're good with that now. They all understand. So that's kind of what we're doing. Again, I'm so proud of the staff for stepping up and undertaking these initiatives and working hard to making them successful. And I think of the things that we can control in the golf business, I think we're doing a pretty good job on that. So, any questions?
No questions from the board?
I had one. I know this is coming out of left field. Can you compare the income from the pro shop with that of the bar?
The bar is not completely broken down because the bar is involved in banquets, weddings, special events, and that money is not broken out. We can look at what we sell compared to what golfers spend there as part of a restaurant. The golf shop does $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, depending on the year. Sales in the restaurant are hundred.
The only reason I wondered, when I was looking through these plans, are we going to go through the plans? Okay, I could wait.
Is there anything you need our help on, Bob?
Weather, help us. 70 and sunny every day from here on in, but thank you.
We got the next couple of days whipped, I think.
Yeah, we are. We're good, yeah.
With our impending expansion and renovations, and we were talking about the youth and the decline in youth and the youth's involvement with technology, is there any opportunity, or do you think there'll be any opportunity to bring in some of the video golfing that you see like in Dave & Buster's and some of these places, that we might be able to entice the youth to come in and play video golf? It does a couple things. It brings in the technology, obviously. It also brings in the ability to continue to do something on rainy days and bad weather.
Sure.
I just don't know if we're going to have that facility, if we could make that area an expanded area to be able to do something like that.
Well, we could certainly look at it. That's a good comment and good input, and certainly worth looking at, that's for sure.
Good. All right.
So we're going to go through the plans now?
Yeah,
Yes, if there's no
used to
questions
have
on our
the screen.
update, then I'd ask Scott to go through, this is an issue that came up out of the strategic plan, and we've moved through and got some details on the two ideas, and we can go through them.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President and trustees. I will take you through the proposed construction plans, and we'll start with the lounge area, and then we'll move on to the dining room. If you have any questions at all during the process, feel free to stop me. Here's an exterior vision of the clubhouse. As you can see, the pro shop and the bar are pretty close together, and that is the view from the 18th fairway. This particular picture is a picture of what the expansion would look like when entering the bar from the pro shop or the main entrance. This here vision is of what it would look like you're currently standing in the expansion right there. So what this would do is eliminate about 3 tables outside in the veranda and add some interior space, giving a little more flexibility while still keeping several tables out on the veranda for people to enjoy the outside. Here's an overview shot of what the bar would look like if the board chose to expand it. It would go from 537 square feet to 833. And it would be able to sit, right now the interior of the bar sits comfortably, about 26 patrons depending on where they're sitting and things like that. This would would bring that total up to 42, give or take, with standing room and standing around the bar, probably maybe even closer to that 50 range. Here's another exterior view of the dining room. Again, similar to the lounge area, what this would do is push the windows back to a veranda that sometimes we see minimal use, and it really doesn't get a lot of functionality. So this would bring the dining room and extend it to the railing you see there. This right here is an interior view of where that expansion would go in the dining room. This is a view from the main bar. And this is another view of where you would be standing in the expansion currently from this view. Here's an overhead of the dining room. Again, our facility allows us to host weddings of roughly about 200 to 210. This expansion would bring it up to 240, 250, depending on things like the dance floor and things like that. And this increase in square footage would go from 3,017 to 3,568 feet. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or Mr. Gavlik.
Does this expansion of the dining room include the north veranda?
The veranda where there's currently ceremonies would still be a veranda, so they'd still have that. The area where you see the chamber grilling out and things like that would still be, that would not be touched. This would just be the other veranda on the other side.
Okay, I know I'm entering into sacred ground here, but if my question before was, if we're receiving more income on bar sales activities than we're in the pro shop, why can't we take a little bit from the pro shop, push the pro shop back just a hair or two?
We did look at that as an option, but it just wasn't because of the...
I can't hear you at all.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Yeah, we did look at that. That was one of the options that we looked at early on.
It was a structural issue.
Yeah, it was a structural
That's exactly
issue,
right.
yeah.
We looked at that and said, hey, we can move it this way, and Brian and some other folks came out there, and we can't physically do that the way the way it's put together.
Well, it's too bad, because right now the pro shop is still, in square footage, appears to be bigger than even the expanded bar area. Is that not correct?
Yeah, it'd be about the same size.
Okay. I wish we could do it that way. And I know it's been sacred ground for a long time, but I had to ask the question.
Well, have we explored expanding the bar into the dining room area?
No, we can't afford to lose that banquet space.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line of that. We
You'd be
can't afford to...
defeating the purpose of expanding the dining room.
Well, it would offset any space that we would eat up. But while we're on the subject, do we have any idea how much more revenue we're going to be generating with these 40 extra seats?
We did look at the numbers, and for an average wedding, we bring in about $15,000. Now, at a 25% profit margin, that would be $3,750. If we increased the seating by 40 at a 25%, would be $4,500. So each average wedding from 200 to 240 would bring in an extra $750. Now, that's only the weddings. That does not include showers or banquets or the flexibility on being able to have two events at the same time and things of that nature. And that $15,000 is just your average standard wedding.
How many, is Paul here?
Yeah.
He's unable to be here tonight.
Huh?
He was unable to be here tonight, but maybe we can...
Okay. How many weddings have we turned down because we were too small?
Well, to give you an example, a week and a half ago, I had a couple come in with a wedding of about 185. The room was set up for 145 for a wedding. They were uncomfortable with 185 and walked out. That's just one example.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, but I bet...
That's one.
Yeah, but that goes on. That goes on.
And just an important note, Trustee Aaron's, to piggyback off what Bob said, currently in our advertising, we advertise for 2 to 210.
Right.
So when a bride looks at the internet or looks at our website, they'll skip right over Bartlett Hills. Also, the important thing to note is that word of mouth. So if a bride says to another potential bride, well, Bartlett Hills can only host 200, the ones that want 225 to 230, they won't come out and investigate us. So we're losing that part of the market share as well.
Yeah, that you don't even know about. And actually, with the room being expanded out, it'll look much more attractive to potential clients. It'll have the appearance of being considerably bigger and more flexible in setup abilities also.
You know, I breached the subject when we were talking about the different things we needed to do with the golf course, months ago. But it seems to me if we're looking to have increased space, with the expansion, but we do have the pro shop upstairs taking up considerable amount of room. It didn't seem to go very favorably with the idea of perhaps moving the pro shop into the downstairs area. But from my understanding, if we're looking at more space to expand the banquet room, you could almost rearrange things and put the bar in a different area and open up the banquet area where the in other words, what I'm saying is that you could, if you're really wanting to open up the space for bigger banquets, then moving the pro shop to a totally different area and moving the bar to where the pro shop would be and opening up that area for more tables in a banquet area would be seem to be a viable option as well. But it would mean that you'd have to move the pro shop to a different area in the building. But from what I've seen, underneath that the pro shop or the bar area, there's an open space that I think it's used for golf clubs or that's stored in that storage area underneath the.
Well, there's an open area down there for pull carts and protection from storms and that type of thing. And then there's a room down there. There's a storage room, and then there's another room for cart attendants, that type of thing that's down there too underneath the veranda.
Would it be comparable in size to what the pro shop is now?
It'd be about a third the size, maybe half, maybe a third to a half the size.
All right. Well, I'm just trying to think of viable options that would open up the banquet facility area, and the golf shop does tend to take up space that perhaps could be used in a better way.
My issue with moving the golf shop to the basement is you lose visual of what's going on out there on the golf course. You can't see anything from down there. So as a staff, like right now, as a staff, we can see the range. We can see the first tee, the 10th tee. We can see the card area. We can see customers coming in. Those are all things that are real important to operating a golf course. Out of a golf shop, when the first and 10th tees are at such a distance away from the golf shop that they are. Now, if you had the first tee and the 10th tee right outside the golf shop, then maybe you could probably get away with moving it down there. But because of the logistics of our tees, of where people start, we can't see it, and it's hard to control. It's hard to control. It's hard to see. It's great to be able to see what's going on out there. Plus, the accessibility of a downstairs area like that, it's not that good. It would basically take that operation out of play the whole winter months, because you're not going to ask people to walk down those stairs or walk down that ramp in the middle of winter and that type of thing. And so you'd be...
Play is being controlled from the pro shop?
Play is controlled from the golf shop.
Or by the rangers out on the course?
Well, yeah, but we're in constant contact with the starters and rangers. You have to be, to me, to be effective in running your golf operation, you have to be able to see what's going on out there. And if that thing was moved, if the golf shop was moved to the basement, you wouldn't have that luxury. Could you do it? You probably could. It would be a challenge.
I think you bring up a great point, Trustee Kammer, but one of the things on top of what Bob mentioned is we have our cart barn right next to the pro shop, and we shift about, would you say, 76 times to 150 carts a day. 150 carts coming in and out of that, and extra machinery, things to wash down. So you would have carts zooming in and out for a good period of the day right next to that pro shop where people are walking out. That's not to say we can't look at that, because I think it's a great idea, but you also have machinery and carts buzzing in and out for a good part of the day.
Well, I just wanted to be exploring all options, that's all I'm saying. So,
But I have a question about the bar. Is the bar expanded? The bar itself? Is that expanded, or is it just expansion?
The bar is expanded. It would be rounded a little bit. You'd have some additional seats at the bar. That's correct.
The reason I ask is because when there's an outing or some kind of function, two people can't work behind that bar, and it causes a huge backup, except that sometimes, it's they'll go to the other side, the dining room, but it's tight back there. So will this accommodate two people to work?
Yeah, well, if the board chooses to go ahead with this, we'll make sure that it accommodates two people. there's a section in the plans that's reserved for us to make adjustments, and we'll make sure that if you guys choose to do that, that we'll make sure there's room for 2 people. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
We budgeted $250,000 for this improvement. How close are we going to come to that number?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Trustee Ranky. I'm sorry.
We budgeted $250,000 for these improvements. Now that we're getting a little bit closer to actually constructing them, how close are we going to come to that $250,000? My concern is that we're going to run over.
Well, that's a great question. We haven't, we were waiting to present this to the board for some direction, and we haven't sent out any bids or proceeded with this at all until we presented it to you. So we're not exactly sure, but we're certainly hoping that it comes right around that.
I have a question. In this picture here, can we import these mountains to the view?
I was wondering the same thing.
Can we get those mountains as a view for our banquet facility? Is that a we can put that picture up, right, Bob? Put it up every time somebody looks.
I was thinking
Mount
the same.
Bartlett.
I was right on to it. I was thinking
Mount
the same
Bartlett.
thing. Absolutely.
I love your salesmanship, Mr. Skricky.
Looks Heck of an obstacle on
Where
the...
are those mountains? You're
It's
in a
like
couple.
South Carolina or something.
Any additional questions or comments?
Just one other thing, in all seriousness. Does this completely eliminate the outdoor rail along the west side of the building? So you couldn't go out on the west side and watch the 18th tee at all?
No, you'd have to stand on the side. But the veranda will still be there on the south side.
On the south side,
Yeah,
and then also a little bit in the front?
From where the wall is of the bar right now to the south, to the railing. That'll still be there. But the front part will be gone because the bar will be expanded out to the railing to the west.
Okay, so you'd be basically looking out the window at the 18th tee?
Yeah, or standing on the veranda.
I think those tables near the absolute end of the veranda towards the railing, you'd still be able to see.
They can't hear you heckle them from there, though.
And is there going to be every effort made to retain the windows? Are we going to keep those windows? Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right. Good, because the expense involved with that would have to be a lot. Good.
Anything else?
I would just make one other comment. When you mentioned it was $700 or some extra because of the expansion, that's pretty difficult math going into $250,000 for a break even.
That's correct. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That's a great point.
I think it would behoove us all to know a little bit more about potentially, at least an educated guess, as to how many times we can cut that room in half versus what we're doing now, right? How many times we can cut that in half? Possibly a little research on the size of weddings. If we hit 225, we're projecting, if we get up to 240 seats, that controls another 30% of the wedding market or something like that. Those are numbers that we could probably look into, I think, because how those have to be statistics, right? So we can say, of all the weddings in this particular geographical area, 30% of them are over 250 and 40% of them are 200 to 240. So that's the gap we're missing, and that would tell us that we're going to get potentially bid on at least another 50 weddings.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Excellent point.
Okay.
We'll get some additional information and bring that back, I think is what we're hearing.
So we're done? You're done with questions?
I would go on.
Okay.
What's the next step? Logical step, yeah.
Okay, so then why we move this along to the board, we'll have some more specific information and start talking about bids and how much it's actually going to cost. Great. Thank you. That's it for finance and golf.
Thank you, Chairman Ranky. Next item on the agenda is Public Works. Chairman Ahrens.
Thank you, Mr. President. The potable water study, and we've got some additional information and changes, and I'll let Jim go through this.
You're right.
And Mr. Burke, and whoever else is Senator Castro chair.
Thank you,
Or
Trustee
Valerie?
Aaron's. As we get our computer set up, the last time we reviewed this project, our future water supply, the board indicated about 5 questions. All of them fairly critical, and perhaps the most critical was some sense of what these rates might look like as they get played out in the future. And we have spent some time and reviewed in detail those last 5 questions, or the 5 questions that we've been dealing with, and Dr. Burke is here today to go through those answers and continue the discussion.
Thank you, Valerie. I think what we're going to do today is, as Valerie said, we've talked about 1 or 2 of these in the informational meeting that we had with the residents about 3-4 weeks ago. And the first that was regarding the emergency connections. If you recall, you asked us what was the best practice, what should we be doing about emergency connections, because right now we do not have one. So we asked around, and we determined that all the Jawa communities that are currently served have a emergency connection with a non-Jawa community. And that means they're getting it from a community that does not have necessarily Lake Michigan water. Cost ranges with complexity, simple ones about $200,000 because it's just not some guy, making connections. There's valving, there's metering, there's other devices to adjust the pressures and those types of things. And so a simple one, $200. It could get more expensive, $400 to $500. And there's additional cost if the pipe next door to your community, the adjoining community, is too small and we have to go downstream to get it. So that's the ballpark range. We know we have the opportunity with Streamwood to tie into there, and we believe that will be on the low end of the costs. I'll make a recommendation here in a second on it. The other option was wells as backup. You have invested over the last since the beginning of the village, you've invested in a community well. You've updated those community wells. You have treatment for those community wells. And so we looked at what other communities are doing. 6 communities that maintain and several others that are discontinuing the operation. We discussed this last time. Some of the communities are saying, it's getting expensive. We have a pretty good reliable source and we have our backup. We can start phasing these out. So the estimates are about $20,000 to $60,000. This is if you have 100% another community, just to keep them operational, tested, and exercised to make sure that they're working. So the labor intensive, because you have to, as I said, exercise it. That's a monthly. There's some utility rates that costs that apply, and if any of those go down while you're using it as a backup, the cost could be significant. So what we did is we said emergency connections are preferred from a cost perspective, at least to the backup wells. Bartlett wells should be maintained and used for backup until the emergency connections, until you're able to work out an agreement with the adjoining communities to get it backup. And so what we did is we took the need for emergency connection and programmed it into the cost for all the 5 alternatives. Just put everybody on the same level playing field. So we believe we've researched this, and that's the recommendation that we've had and we're recommending. The next question was whether or not the City of West Chicago was a viable option. Public Works Director Ninjas contacted the Public Works Director in West Chicago, requested information. Their capacity is only about 3 MGD. It's not enough to provide our demand, if you recall, is roughly 4 MGD. That's an average. That's not a peaking. As you recall, we're getting or requesting to obtain from Elgin. West Chicago plant is a lot further than even the connections to the DuPage Water Commission, and so that's a consideration. And as we discussed before, West Chicago has a very good water treatment plant. But they do use the wells for the source water, and certainly, like other communities, there's the uncertainty as to the long-term viability of that and any other option relying on wells. The cursory conclusion is that it is not a viable option due to the amount of water they have available to sell us. the distance away they are, and the uncertainties related to the well as a water supply option. The additional capital costs that we assigned, and I'm sure the board remembers the discussion on the $800,000 is applied to all of them, as I said. There's also the discussion about the water treatment cost. These were programmed in a long-term capital cost, but we took them explicitly and brought them in here so you know the full picture for alternatives 1 and 3. That's a WRT treatment. That's the more sophisticated treatment to remove the the naturally occurring elements that are in the groundwater. You currently have some of that treatment in your existing wells. And then at the 3 existing sites where you produce high quantities of water, we're putting in the backup power, standby power, so that those, for options 1 and 3, you have that reliability issue addressed. And that's also a best practice for the type of system that you have. Then we took the numbers that you have seen before. We met with staff, and staff suggested that rather than using a 5% interest and a 20-year term, we should be looking at our calculations using a 6% interest to allow for the variability in interest rates between now and the installations of the system improvements.
I have a question about that. Wouldn't we be, for financing, wouldn't we be selling bonds? Aren't bonds at a fixed rate?
I beg, our bonds what? I'm sorry.
Our bonds at a fixed rate. That's a Jeff question.
Would be an average coupon rate over a 20-year period. So we're factoring in 6% right now. Interest rates right now are at an all-time low, but there is the possibility that they'll go up, so we're being conservative with our projections.
You think so, huh?
We'll find out tomorrow, actually.
That's what all the experts tell me every day. The so-called ones.
Sorry.
Okay, no, good question.
And there wasn't a housing bubble, right?
Then what we've done is, as requested by the mayor, I think in one of our meetings 2 meetings ago, we were asked to identify what the selling rate, the village selling rate could be. We looked at 2019 as the projection year. That's 5 years out. That would give you time to do some of the short-term improvements that would allow you to take advantage of entering into agreement with Elgin or implementing some of the measures that we've discussed a second ago. So what we did is looked at the cost that you would likely be charging in 2019. We looked at alternative 1. We said, all right, that's status quo. So that means that we're just going to be receiving from Elgin under the current agreement at an average increase of approximately 3.4% over the last 10 years. We did not use the historical average, which would be even higher, if you recall. That was higher, but we used the last 10 years. We took a look at the alternative 2, which freezes the increase on an annual basis if that's what you adopt at 2.5%. So we looked at that and took the Elgin rate, residential rate, and increased it at 2.5% over that period of time. Alternative 3, there is no adjustments because you're not paying for the groundwater that you're extracting. That's a commodity that exists and that you are not purchasing at this point in time. You're processing it and you're distributing it, but not purchasing it as a commodity. And in alternatives 4 and 5, if you look at the last 10 years, we did not try to extrapolate the last 4 years, which have been 25%. We looked over the last 10 years, just like we did with the Elgin rate. And that's almost 10% increase in what the city of Chicago charges out. So what we did is we took a look at the what your selling rate would be. We cost inflated all the capital costs that we estimated that were necessary for these alternatives at 3.5% per year. Financing is at 6%, 20-year term, no bond coverage. The O&M costs that you currently have right now, you have to have people repair the water main, distribute, you have energy cost, operation and maintenance cost. We looked at that $2.5 million per year, inflated at 3% per year. Additional O&M cost added to alternatives 1 and 3 with the additional cost for operating new wells for those two alternatives. Water selling rate for alternative 3 assumed at the current rate plus inflation based on Bartlett's 10-year historical average rate increase, and the rate range I'm going to show for alternative 2. The lower value assumes that for the first 10 years, if you decide to go with Elgin, you would start taking 1 million gallons right away, and you have two options. One, to build the second structure where you take more water from Elgin, or 2, use your wells for the 10 years, get the useful life out of them, and phase it in. And the difference, of course, in the numbers that I'm going to show is, one, you're upfront spending a lot of money to get the new system, the new connection, and the new improvements in your distribution system. So we looked at that range and provided you that alternative, which would go into looking at the options here. And the other thing that we looked at is, and I'll show this, Bartlett's selling rate right now, and per 1,000 gallons, it's $4.16. If you looked at the cost here, $6.36 projected, and an annual increase from 2004 to 2014. You had 4.3% increase, and that projects out to $7.85 in 2019. Elgin rate we increased at, as I said, this cost. This is the number that you would get at the 3.4 historic increase, 2.5 based on the agreement. So there's a difference in what this cost that you would be buying treated water from Elgin. You still have the cost of your staff, electricity, and all the other components that I talked to. This does not include your cost to distribute it, but the raw cost that you could expect with those two options. So once again, if it just increased from the current rate, it'd be $5.34 versus $5.11 if the contract that's been discussed would be implemented. You can take a look, and this is what the City of Chicago right now is distributing right up to the portals of where the Water Commission or the Jawa starts taking it. Obviously, there's a lot of costs that they incur in pumping, treating, or putting perhaps disinfectant in that, and then pumping it all the way from their ports of entry all the way out here. So that's just the raw cost, and these were all factored into our projections. So this is the result of a lot of implementation of the different factors. This is all factored on 3.9, almost 4 million gallons per day. We started out the presentation a long time ago talking about the historic rates. Alternative 1, Elgin, would be 2 million gallons per day. That would be, you're taking that 2 million, and we use that number. Elgin, Alternative 2, which was the Elgin, this is the 2-tiered rate, reflecting the lower cost. You're going to get 1.1 as a bump here, 1.15. That's contrasted to that 1.25 that you see here under Alternative 1, which is your current contract. So the cost of deep well treatment, this is the number that we've used in demonstrating what the costs would be for the future. Capital, the inflation factors that I've talked about earlier, 3.5. Debt service, we talked about that. Inflation factor, I talked about that. And volume sold, I think we've talked a little bit, but you're going to buy 100 gallons from, or you're going to produce 100. You're only going to sell 85 gallons because of losses and people taking water that's not built. But that's a normal, that's actually a pretty reasonable number, 15% loss. There's communities that are in the a much higher number rate than that. But I just want to make sure that that's assumption that we looked. And the range for alternatives 1 and 3, the additional well facility, needing to look at one additional well. So you can see these numbers, the status quo. You're looking at 840 to 890 in 2019, once again for 1,000 gallons of water. Alternative 2, which is all Elgin, with the caveat that the all Elgin number here says you're still providing almost 1 million gallons with your own wells for the first 10 years. 1050 is if you say, I'm unfronting all of our work, putting the additional connection to Elgin and the associated costs associated with that. That would be 1050. Alternative 3 is if you continue, if you expand your wells and put additional wells, additional treatment, the cost would range from roughly 790 to 840, and you can see the relatively large costs associated with getting water from the Lake Michigan providers. So we try to give a reasonable estimate of what we think the cost would be in 2019. Obviously, none of us had a crystal ball as to the inflation rates, the ability to bond or fund these projects. So we try to bracket and the best we could and give you the range of values. So I think these are the questions that were asked of us in our previous meetings, and we've tried to address those questions.
I'm a little on the gap or the range here on these alternatives. So alternative 2, 840 to 1050. The 840 would say, okay, we're going to start down the road of 100% Elgin and maintain whatever the difference is with our existing wells, and then over time we're going to have an additional expense that at some point will make up the difference in the two prices?
Yes. Over time, you would right away you'd start being able. You make the modifications that we spelled out in our original estimates. The modifications necessary to get you an additional 1 million gallons per day from Elgin. So you would go up and you'd get roughly 3 out of the 4 million gallons that you want. But that you would supplement that increment using the existing wells. Mm-hmm. Have your wells. The other alternative that we discussed, and we've discussed it here, is to say, all right, we want to go 100%, get off of the wells right away, and that would mean that you would upfront additional cost, which would be the additional pumping station, and all the piping necessary to adjust the pressures and make sure that the system is giving you equivalent to what you have today.
We're going to have to incur that cost either way, is that correct?
If you went, with a 1050, if you did it right away. The lower number is, all right, you've invested in the wells already. You have the wells. They are producing, 45% of your water today. They will be reduced, and you can rely on, at least for a period of time, the wells to produce that increment.
What did it cost last year to run the wells?
I think the all in, and that includes the water main and the other, the pumping to the towers and all the other work is $2.5 million. Is that the O&M for last year? I think that's the number that we use. Mark, is that correct? What's that $2.5 million represent? Okay. All right, this number right here, the base O&M cost of $2.5 million represents what?
Yeah, that represents the current O&M cost and all in on the option of the Elgin option.
Okay. What is the base O&M that this village is incurring today for the operation of its well system and distribution system? Okay, so I was right. We went through that. That's so.
We don't have the other numbers down here, but the second pumping station, if we did all Elgin, is like $3 million, wasn't it?
Mark, the pumping station and the other water main associated with that $10.50 rate was what? We have that in that spreadsheet. We had it in years 10 to 20, and the issue here is now we were moving it up to the first upfront.
It was about the future improvements under Alternative 2 came to about $14 million in capital costs.
And that's what we're moving up, and that's reflected in the $10.50.
That's over 5 years, right? Or until we build the second station.
We're assuming that you would have it operational in 2019 under the 1050 scenario.
And then alternate 4 and 5, they were 52 and 53 million.
The cost of the bringing the water,
And
the buy-in, Mark, what was the total cost for alternatives 4 and 5?
Was about $15 million, 14.8 or so to...
For alternative 4 and 5, all in. Buy-in plus the cost of taking the water main all the way out there. It was higher than that.
it's 52 or 53 million. If I do.
Yeah, the total capital cost, including buy-in, was $50 million.
Thanks. You're right.
Okay, and then wasn't it $3 million for the other access backup station too, which we are connecting the pipes? There was another. It was like 52 or 53 million. If I'm pretty sure of that.
For the other one, which one?
No, for alternate 4 and 5, they were like $500,000.
Yeah, they're approximately the size.
It was over 50 million.
Yes,
so it wasn't
right.
just 50.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a lot of additional cost.
With the emergency connections, where you've made the cost ranges from 200,000, or then the complex from 400 to 500,000. Obviously, that's our insurance plan. Would we be connecting onto another village? But I can't imagine that another village would do it for free. As far as there must be other expenses involved with that, a yearly or monthly expense to connecting to other villages in some way? There isn't?
I certainly have not seen a situation. There's mutual benefit. If you're making an interconnect that if they went out of water, then you would want to reciprocate and provide them water service at the same time. And the reason why there's a range, we don't know how the two systems will operate. What we're doing is we're tying into two pressurized systems, and there might have to be additional valving and pressure reducing valves or pumping to make sure that, by us taking their water or them taking your water, that you don't have any problems. So that's why it's a little fuzzy. No one's taken a hard look at the water distribution systems and modeled it. That's the reason why it's more than just, as I said, just the pipe itself. There's other things that are associated with it. But I've not seen another community charge a sister community money for a cost. And I'm looking at the others.
Well, they charge when they need it. That's how we.
I don't see anybody else that just, Claire, I saw 4 other people that have knowledge of these things that not know.
Okay. So that's good to know. You just think of villages looking for extra income wherever they get, and somebody ties onto their pipeline and say, well, that's great, now you have your insurance, and for that insurance we're going to charge you a little extra per year to maintain that connection in some way, but I'm glad that isn't happening. That's what you're saying.
I've not seen it happen.
Because it flows both ways.
Yes.
Turn the knob.
I think we discussed this, that the ultimate way to pay for this, I know we talked about, was selling bonds, and I'm assuming the way that we would then pay for those is add that onto the water bills, the water rates. Is that a fair assumption?
That's correct. That's contained within these proposed rates.
Okay. And I guess what I would like to see next time we have another crack at this is kind of narrow it down to some brass tacks. The average Bartlett homeowner, what's it going to cost them?
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, I didn't figure that'd be a real difficult extrapolation, especially for a man with Mr. Martinovich's accounting abilities. And then secondly, kind of where are we at just in generalities on the timeline with this? I know at one point we discussed, we said, well, there's no huge rush here. But this is something clearly that, we need to discuss. I'm not trying to push us along. I'm just trying to get some rough time frame. I think it very much behooves us to continue to look at this and to answer everybody's and all of our questions. And I think it's critical that once the board has come to some general consensus that we do everything we can to promote that to every person in the community as much as any of them will come forward or listen to what we have to say. So I'm not trying to rush this. I am just trying to get some concept in my mind. Are we 90 days out? Are we 9 years out? Are we 19 years out? Kind of where are we on the scale?
The existing agreement with Elgin caused us to give them some notice by 2014 about what we were looking at. And in fact, we did that. We have been meeting with them with no commitments, but they know that what we are considering, and they are comfortable with that in terms of fulfilling the commitment from the first agreement. Beyond that, we started pretty early. So 2010 is when the agreement is up. We obviously have to do a lot of infrastructure and work before we get there. But one of the things that we're proposing to do as a part of that is to begin a couple of these options early on, not wait till 2019. If we're able to secure a lower rate than we have now, why would we wait? We might as well move forward and save our residents money now instead of sometime after 2019. So I guess what I'm telling you is I don't think that I think we have plenty of time to continue this discussion until the board is comfortable with a conclusion.
Okay.
How about that? You've been talking to Elgin. I had suggested that we, instead of 30, we try for 50. Have you brought that up?
Well, we talked about that as well. That's a good point, and we looked into that.
I asked a lot of people that are in this, a lot of village attorneys, and no one has ever seen anything greater than this 35 year. The only thing that anybody ever say, and Brian's one of the, we discussed this as well, the only thing you've seen at 50 was like land lease, where someone would lease the underlying land, and that was pretty rare.
Lock it in as long as we can.
Right.
What do you mean, no?
I said, well. I talked to the Elgin attorney, just hypothetically, if they would go beyond 35 years, and it was a quick no. So, and looked at some of the other agreements. There are restrictions on, your ability to contract long term. So, I've looked at several of these agreements. Nothing has ever been beyond 35 years, and many were shorter.
Well, see, we already got 5 years, because they were talking 30 and you said 35, so.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, and
Just
we'll
real quick,
continue our
Mr. Burt,
discussion.
I'm sorry. When we look at this, obviously, most people's eyes go to the least expensive. I think it's important to note that in the original proposal, even though 100% wells was the least expensive, it was by far the most risk involved in a future water supply.
That's correct. And we just saw an article in the paper where Oswego, a community that currently has wells, is also looking to obtain its water through the Fox River because the uncertainties and the long-term water quantity and quality of the groundwater.
Okay. Thanks.
That's it. That concludes Public Works.
Thank you, Chairman Ahrens. When is our next adventure in water study?
That depends on how our agendas are moving along, so I can have it as soon as the board would like.
Well, it's important, and it's going to be a long conversation, I think, so, and we'd love to get the input from as many community members as possible, because this is not something that excites too many people, but it enrages a lot of people.
That's correct.
So before I ask for an adjournment here, I just want to remind everyone that we'll be going into an executive session to discuss the purchase of real estate pursuant to Section 2C5, sale of real estate pursuant to Section 2C6. And I'll entertain a motion and personnel pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Trustee Shipman, seconded by Trustee Martin. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's?
Yes.
Camera?
Yes?
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Key?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes. We're adjourned to executive session.